Good morning, everyone. We are very pleased to welcome you to this new edition of the Recyclers Talks, which are being organized in the framework of EuRIC. I'd like again to thank EuRIC for the partnership we have made in order to basically discuss and exchange about the priorities that the recycling industry is having. This is, as usual, a very important time frame since the European Commission, basically in the phase of implementing its new circular economy action plan, which was published nearly 2 years ago. And part of that new circular economy action plan is about creating a well-functioning market, internal market for secondary raw materials. For the European recycling industry, this means a couple of actions which have been put forward in this action plan. And the first one is obviously moving forward with end of waste. Why end of waste is a critical action for the recycling industry? It's simply because we think, and we've seen in the past, that it's a very efficient instrument to basically have an easier market access, have harmonized conditions among member states. And still today, we see that there are too many differences despite the internal market when it comes to free movement of waste materials which have been processed or for processing, and also in instruments to provide legal certainty and reward quality. And as a recycling industry, we are convinced that quality raw materials that are coming from recycling, which are meeting quality specifications, must have an easier access to the internal market to also be able to level the playing field with extracted raw materials. And legal certainty is a key element among other instruments like pool measures to incentivize the use of recycled materials back into products to achieve that goal. We are pleased to see that the European Commission is resuming the work on end of waste criteria. We are very pleased today to have a large panel to discuss those issues and to welcome Peter Westman, who is within DG Environment at the European Commission in charge with other colleagues of that file. So thank you very much for taking the time, Peter, to be with us today, but also other speakers from the industry, from the recycling industry, and also from the tire manufacturing sector to explain why end of waste is important, be it in relation to existing markets for secondary raw material to make them easier in terms of free movement, or also in terms of new markets, since as we are transitioning towards a new circular economy, we are going to develop new end markets for recycled materials. And here again, rewarding quality, having legal certainty is absolutely essential to move towards a new circular economy. Last but not least, without already jumping to the conclusions, we see an interesting trend that member states are moving forward with national end of waste criteria. That is something that we obviously support, but we think, and this is also rooted in the Waste Framework Directive, that there should be a link between what member states are doing at national level and the conditions among member states, and thus the instrumental role that the Commission can play in that respect to have more harmonized conditions or criteria when it comes to end of waste. I would like to conclude by again thanking EuRIC for the opportunity to speak and broadcast these Recyclers Talks. And I would like to give back the floor to you, Felix, to moderate the panel discussion and to have an interesting exchange, and obviously encourage the audience to ask questions, even the difficult ones, when it comes to the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank all of you so much for being here again at this second day of EuRIC for this Recyclers talk. Emmanuel, you said it already. It's going to be a really interesting discussion. And thanks to all of the speakers for joining in. Emmanuel as Secretary General of EuRIC, and also we will have a lot of interesting people here. You already talked about Peter, who will start it off. He is from the European Commission, the legal officer for DG Environment and Waste Management and Secondary Materials Unit, where he's based. Then we will have a few others, starting with Sebastian Ricard, the Director for Sustainable Development and Public Affairs at PubRec Group. Afterwards, we will start it on with Sarah Steenström with us. She is the product and market developer at Easy Mining, a part of the Raan Cells Group. And after that, go on with Alex van Gelderen, advisor of ELT management at ETRMA, and finish with Lars Rahauge from Genan, where he is there for environment and business development. Concluding remarks we will have from Alicia Garcia Franco, the Vice President of EuRIC. She is also Director General of the Spanish Federation for Recovery and Recycling. And to start it off, I will hand over the word to Peter now, who's going to give a quick presentation on what the Commission is thinking about the whole end of waste discussion. And finishing that off, we will have maybe a few minutes to answer some questions. So start it off on the left or right, depending on the device you are on. You can hit them into our question box, and I will have a look at those and see which we have the time to answer. Peter, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this morning's Recyclers talk, and good morning to everyone. So I come from the unit in DG Environment responsible for waste legislation and waste policy, and we are now work is currently underway, as Emmanuel has mentioned, in the Commission to look into the possibilities for developing EU-wide criteria for items which were once waste but which have been recycled to the extent that they should no longer be considered as waste. And we call these end of waste criteria, and the specific conditions for this are regulated in Article 6 of the revised Waste Framework Directive from 2018. And we are also looking into EU-wide byproducts criteria based on Article 5 of the Waste Framework Directive. So the Commission will, at the end of this year, present a short list of waste streams to be prioritized for EU-wide end-of-waste criteria. We have not yet decided which specific waste streams will be included in this shortlist, but it will be based on information gathered from a stakeholder consultation last year, a workshop with member states and stakeholders in September this year, and their input following this workshop, and also a study which was previously carried out for the European Commission. And after this prioritization exercise, the Joint Research Center of the Commission will work on one specific waste stream until 2023 that could be followed up by the Commission with a draft implementing act as set out in Article 6 of the Waste Framework Directive. And from 2024, we will have also another 2 or maybe 3 other waste streams that come from the same prioritization exercise that will be further considered. Well, the general background is that in order to fully achieve a circular economy, we need to bring more secondary raw materials into the economy. And currently, the amount of recycled material which is used is too low. And we need also to bring secondary raw materials up to a level where they can compete with the primary raw materials. And we have a number of EU-wide end-of-waste criteria in place since the last 8 to 10 years for iron, steel, and aluminium scrap since 2011, copper scrap since 2013, and since 2012 for glass cullet. And member states have also developed a wide range of national criteria for end of waste. So that means quite a lot of end of waste criteria which are applicable only at national level in member states. And in accordance with the revised Waste Framework Directive from 2018, the Commission shall monitor these developments of national waste criteria, end of waste criteria, and assess the need to develop further EU-wide criteria. And the detailed criteria that we will develop shall ensure a high level of protection of environment and human health. And without EU-wide criteria, there may be significant risks for the distortions of the EU's internal market for secondary raw materials. There may be legal uncertainty for member states, recyclers, and users of secondary raw materials, as well as possible disputes between member states' authorities over whether shipments concern waste or non-waste. And risks may, of course, also arise for the environment and human health due to the application of possibly inappropriate criteria and verification schemes. So the study that we carried out for the Commission in 2020 provided useful information on the national implementation of end of waste provisions and an insight into these national practices, because member states shall, according to a directive from 2015, notify the Commission of the national criteria. But there are also case-by-case decisions in member states on end of waste, which don't have to be notified. So the Commission's study analyzed some of these national decisions on particular waste streams, and a number of existing problems were highlighted, including incoherence between the national regimes and a lack of legal uncertainty and a lack of a level playing field. So consequently, our study confirmed to us that there is a need which exists for EU-wide criteria. And as a consequence, this is now one of the key actions in the circular economy action plan, namely to scope the development of further EU-wide end of waste and byproducts criteria. So this is a first step, so that by the end of this year, we will have identified the waste or the material streams that should be prioritized when developing EU-wide criteria in the coming years. And as I said before, we will start with one specific stream on which the Joint Research Center will work until 2023. And then afterwards, the Joint Research Center's work could be followed up by the Commission with a draft implementing act. And from 2024, 2 or 3 other streams from the same prioritization exercise may be further considered. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that brief introduction into your thought of the whole thing. Maybe could you, while we wait for a few questions, could you maybe go a little bit further on why you think to conclude all of these things together is the key to market access for materials in the different markets? What do you think are the key factors we will have to do? We will have to take on into the discussion, especially with our next speakers from the industry.
First of all, of course, it is important that we develop these criteria at EU level to ensure the functioning of the internal market. What the situation is that we have, of course, some criteria in place, but rather limited, and we need now to select the most relevant waste streams for end of waste criteria to work on in the coming years. So it's really important now to at this stage to decide and to discuss the relevance of different waste streams and which waste stream we should start working on in the European Commission and the Joint Research Center for the next years. Thank you.
Thank you. And do you have a preference already? Are there thoughts on that? Which waste streams that might be?
We have made a preliminary shortlist, but this is just it's not it's still being developed. So we are now compiling information that we received from stakeholders and member states after the stakeholder consultation and the workshop in September this year. So, but of course there are such materials and waste streams as plastics and textiles and rubber, construction and demolition waste, waste electronic equipment, biological materials, paper, slags, and a few others as well on this potential list.
Thank you very much for this insight. Can you maybe go in a little bit further with that, because there are coming in a lot of questions coming in, especially defining that. What are the criteria you're looking for the first initial trials you will have with for this project?
Yes, of course the criteria are of course in Article 6 of the Waste Framework Directive. So we are following these criteria for end of waste. And in addition, we are looking to of course, the size of the waste stream, how much waste is generated, how much waste is shipped between member states, and of course the relevance in terms of markets and in terms of environment and health.
Thank you so much, Peter. I would for now hand the word over to our next speaker, and maybe come back to you with a few questions afterwards. Thank you already so much for these insights into your work. For now, I would, do you have any last words? Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
Not only that, we would very much welcome this morning's input from stakeholders, and it would be very looking forward to hearing your views and taking further questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we will have a few minutes for that. And for anyone who still has questions for Peter, just put them into the question box, and we will have a look to, if not here live, answer them afterwards and to get in touch with you. Perfect. Then next, I would love to have Sebastian Ricard here with me from PubRec Group. They are processing more than 16 million tons of waste per year. And Sebastian, maybe you can tell me a little bit about what are your thoughts, your ideas on how this is going to work in practice for you as a waste processing company.
Well, thank you, Felix. Hello, everyone. Thanks first to EuRIC and EuRIC for welcoming us. It's always a pleasure to be here. I would like to insist on a few things, and I'll try and be quick, even if it's a very, very important topic for us. Indeed, PubRec, we process 16 million tons of waste annually. We're mostly based in France. We have about 280 plants, and we achieve a recycling rate, material recovery rate of nearly 80%. And when the new Circular Economy Action Plan was published and called for a well-functioning EU market for secondary raw materials or raw materials from recycling, we were very pleased, of course. And what we need with it is, of course, an EU-level end of waste with EU criteria that would be absolutely essential. Just a quick comment. We are not against waste, but what we believe is that waste is something that has no more economic value, and our job as recyclers is to take care of this waste, process it and transform it into raw materials that can be used as substitute to virgin raw materials. The environmental legislation at EU or at national level aims at protecting the environment, making sure that a waste is processed and taken care of as it should be, making sure that it's being collected properly, processed properly, and it basically does not end up anywhere in the nature, in the environment. So we have the same goal, and we are not against this kind of legislation. What we're calling for is for end of waste criteria that can be objective, that of course will meet safety, health and safety and environmental protection standards. This is like not even an option. But what we would like to see happening is an end of waste at EU level that will literally allow a smooth cross-border transportation from one EU country to another EU country, acknowledging that these raw materials from recycling comes from a waste that has been processed, that has been through quality checking standards, that meets quality standards, and that basically acknowledges the fact that it is a raw materials. It's very important to us. What we're calling for in such end of waste criteria is, of course, not something that would be mandatory. It has to reward quality, it has to reward investment, it has to reward a process, and it should not be automatic. Of course, so I'd say it could be on a voluntary base from the recyclers. Also, if I take the example of paper, we start to have, for paper, which is non-hazardous waste, we start to see various national end of waste procedures with national end of waste statuses, which of course starts to be a part of the solution. But then what we would need is like mutual recognition, and the EU would be definitely a great support for the end of waste of paper at EU level, especially since for paper and the recovered papers that we produce, we have a norm, an European standard that is EN 643, which is the perfect guidelines for us to make sure that we have met the quality standard required by the paper mills that use our raw materials. But we just not only need this end of waste criteria, as we saw, we need not only just end of waste for circularity and for transborder movement, we also need a demand. We also need a market, and not only for paper, but we saw this for other type or other waste streams. The way to create demand, one of the main way to create demand, is the mandatory recycling contents that have been implemented by the EU for the PET bottles, for instance, by 2025. Within 3 months after these mandatory rates have been published by the European Union, we saw that the prices of the recycled PET has been decorrelated from the prices of the virgin raw material. And this is crucial for us. You know, if you have a demand, then demand will call for the raw materials we can produce, and this demand will definitely call for investment in the recycling facilities within the European Union. And this is the third point I would like to insist on. These investments in recycling facility within the European Union territory will create jobs, will create local jobs. And these investments are the key to process the waste and to increase the collection rate and the recycling rate of the waste at EU level. And when we have a waste shipment regulation that is being discussed at the moment, and we hear that some people are calling for a ban for waste exports, so that basically we will process this waste and recycle it within EU, it's great. But if you don't have the facilities, if you don't have the investment, of course, it's not going to happen. So we need this investment, and all will come from this demand and this end of waste status, especially on paper, that will allow to smooth the circularity and the movement within country, so that we can, what is being collected and recycled at some point can be used and incorporated in another product that will come back within our country. I just would like to make a quick comment on what Peter Westman said when he said that we need to make sure that secondary raw materials achieve a level so that they can compete with primary raw materials. Of course, this is a matter of quality. As recyclers, our goal is to produce a quality standard, a raw material that meets the quality standard of the virgin raw materials, so that they can be used as perfect substitutes. And when I say perfect substitute, they even have a positive impact when we talk about all the energy savings and the CO2 emissions avoided thanks to recycling. And this is very, very important. And at some point, I think that when the European Union is considering a carbon mechanism at the border of the EU, this is very important. It's vital. It will definitely take into account, by taking into account this carbon footprint, it will help to put the correct price on the raw materials, and it will definitely boost the economy and the well-functioning EU market we're all calling for. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian, for this comment from your end. Just let me ask, for that you just commented on Peter as well. You've been talking a lot about the waste movement criteria. Do you have a preference which waste stream should be prioritized, as this was a topic very much discussed in the comments right now?
Well, to frankly speaking, I think paper is the perfect candidate. I mean, paper and board. Why? Because we have paper and board waste everywhere in Europe. We have paper mill within Europe that are needing and calling for this material. We have a European standard, EN 643, which is a norm, and that is the perfect guideline, quality guideline, to tell us what raw material we need to produce at what standard. And we know that it will meet the paper mill's demand. And also, I mean, I would say most paper waste streams are non-hazardous waste. It doesn't have it's like we all have sheet of paper on our desks and everywhere. It's everywhere. It rings a bell to everyone. We use it. It's not something that is comes out of the blue. So yeah, I think it would be perfect. You have paper mills in Spain, in France, in Germany, in Scandinavia. It's perfect for and you have the volumes also available.
Mm-hmm. Are there any obstacles you would see with that, except what you talked about already? Anything we would have to look at in paper, especially, but maybe even further than that?
The main obstacle, I would say, is to make sure that to achieve end of waste, you meet quality standards. And when I said quality standards, it's not just the standards required by the incorporating facilities, the paper mill or the plastic factory manufacturer or whatever. It's also in regards to the health and the environmental protection that we need to consider. So yeah, I mean, this is of course what we need to pay attention to. Make sure we don't make something that is harmful for the environment. But when it comes to paper, again, I think it's kind of obvious that it's safe.
Sure. Thank you so much for this insight from yours. And let's get back to that maybe in the end. I would for now hand the word over to Sarah Stjernström from Easy Mining, and she will tell us a little bit about her end and what they think is the next step with all of that. So Sarah, here's your presentation as well, and I would say have fun. Thank you so much, and I'll be back in a second.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that introduction. And I think it will be hard to compete now with papers, but I will do my best. I work as a product manager at Easy Mining, and Easy Mining is part of Ragn-Sells Group. And Easy Mining is an innovation company dedicated to closing nutrient cycles. So I will be focusing on biological materials. You can change slide, please. And I think that if we are being serious with the transition to a circular economy, being able to use waste as a resource and raw material is key. And in the strategy of reaching a circular economy, the lack of end-of-waste criteria has been pointed out as a barrier in the interface between waste and chemicals legislation. And also in large parts of today's global economy, material standards are based on the origin of a resource rather than its quality. And most reused materials lack end-of-waste criteria. And this in turn may affect the development of circular approaches. You can change slide, please. So we need to focus on equality instead of origin. And I think recovered nutrients is a relevant example where end-of-waste criteria is missing to a large part. Recovered nutrients can mainly be used in conventional farming, organic farming, and as animal nutrition. However, all these legislations and thereby markets are closed to almost all recovered nutrients that are extracted from waste. And today, these legislations focus on origin instead of quality. You can change slide, please. Take phosphorus as an example. Phosphorus is an essential element for life and a key nutrient. And because of its limited availability, the EU has included phosphorus on the list of critical raw materials. And therefore, I think phosphorus recycling is an inevitable part of our future society. And at the same time, new legislations like the taxonomy and hopefully the sewage sludge directive will help to push for recovery rates to demand phosphorus recovery from, example, sewage sludge. But this will, of course, not be enough. We cannot have recovered phosphorus with high quality availability available for fertilizers or feed materials that fulfill the quality demands in these product-specific legislations, but they are not accepted on the market due to linear legislations focusing on origin instead of quality. And the last slide, please. So the way forward is to continue to push for recovery rates for nutrients. That is extremely important. We need those legislations also, but also to open these markets. And this would be done with EU harmonized end-of-waste criteria. Relevant criteria for high safety and quality are already included in these legislations, making the work easier, I think. So to conclude, I think that end-of-waste criteria for recovered phosphorus used in animal nutrition, which makes it high value and easier than to support chemical recycling and efficient detoxification, which is costly, I think that should be the highest priority. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah, for that quick introduction on your thoughts. It's really interesting. We got from Sebastian the one thing about the waste in general and to be able to be transported and used across borders. You are now talking to us about the difference between rating on origin versus rating on quality. What would you say is the next big thing here? You said you want to do it in the organic market with nutrients. Why do you think this would be best to be the first thing to be prioritized right now versus what Sebastian maybe said with paper, which is probably a bigger market, but of course it's a bigger market as well. So what would your thoughts be on this?
No, I think that phosphor is a critical raw material. We need to close the circle. Today, EU largely imports phosphorus from mined virgin phosphorus outside EU, and it comes with a lot of cadmium, for example. So we have the opportunity actually to put demands on recovery rates for phosphorus and open the markets, and voila, we have an internal market where EU can supply itself with phosphorus. And I think right now the feed legislation for using phosphorus is totally closed for all extracted phosphorus from wastewaters, for example. So I think it would be wise to open that legislation to make that circular, because we have the opportunity now to extract a lot of phosphorus from our wastewater treatment plants. We need to see them as resource plants and reuse the nutrients wisely.
Yes, can you go into a little bit more detail, except of course changing the quality measures, etc. What are the critical things you need in a legislation to get this done, to get an internal market rolling in the EU?
Yeah, I think this is maybe an example that's not the same for paper or tires that we will talk to later about. But I think here we already have a legislation with high safety and quality demands. And if you have chemical recycling extracting phosphorus, you can get the phosphorus to fulfill the quality demands in the feed legislation. So here it's more adding and permitting, adding and the waste criteria and permitting that if the recovered phosphorus fulfills all the quality demands in this legislation, it's allowed to use. So I think here it would be quite easy. I guess it's not easy, but from one point of view, it's quite easy to add a thing in the legislation today for feed to say that it's allowed. If you fulfill all the safety and quality demands, it's allowed.
All right.
Because right now it's not.
Right now it's not. That's true. And to have one last little bit critical question for you, because Sebastian said it about the environmental safety of the whole thing. Do you see any problems maybe coming up with that in the future if we would start with a chemical recycling process, or is that something where you don't see any problems?
Of course, you need to have an efficient chemical recycling, and you don't want to use too much chemicals, etc. But if you do an LCA and compare to mining, for example, I think you are on the right side almost every time. So that I'm not so worried about.
Perfect. Then we won't. Thank you. Thank you for your insights, Sarah. I would for now go on and get over to Lars to get an insight. As you said it already, we will get a little bit into the next topics with, as you said it already, maybe go into rubber and tire, which has been asked a lot as well. Sorry, 1 second. With that here, we got your presentation here. Lars, thank you so much for joining in. Here you go, and see you in a second. I can't hear you, Lars. You need to turn on your microphone.
Excuse me very much.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. First of all, thank you very much, Felix, for giving me the floor. And thank you to Peter Westman from the Commission for lining up the whole process that is going to take place now from the Commission side in order to choose a waste stream for the next end of waste criteria. And thank you also very much to Sebastian and Sarah for the very good points about paper and nutrients. I'm absolutely convinced that there are a lot of good reasons to choose many waste streams for the next end of waste criteria. It could also be waste plastics, it could be textiles, etc. But what I'm going to do is to tune in on the waste stream that I work with, and which I think is extremely well suited for the next end of waste, EU-wide end of waste criteria, and that is the end of life tires waste stream. And I have, to make it simple, I have 5 good reasons I want to share with you why especially end of life tires should be chosen as the first waste stream to work with for EU-wide criteria. We are working with very well developed markets. A lot of the applications are well known, and the market has been existing for many years. However, there is also a considerable potential to contribute to the EU Green Deal with neutrality in 1950, because still a part of this waste stream will be used for energy recovery. And what we really want with the end of waste criteria for tires, end of life tires, will be, of course, to develop further the market for the materially recycled products. Then we already have national criteria in some member states. That is, of course, a great help because we have experience out there, and that will be a great help in order to develop the EU-wide criteria. We have very, very good data on the end-of-life tire waste stream. And finally, there is a full support in the whole supply chain from manufacturers to collectors to recyclers. Next one, please. Let me take the first point now. We have already developed market for rubber and steel from end-of-life tires, and it's sold in existing markets. As a matter of fact, the company I'm working with has been doing that since the 1990s. So we really have some very good and very well developed markets. We also have nice prices in the markets, we believe. I write here 860 euro upwards as an indicator. So it's quite good value raw materials that we are producing from this waste stream, and it's quite ridiculous that has these high quality raw materials to be classified as waste. And then finally, we have very widespread customer groups for the secondary raw materials that we are producing. We have the rubber industry, the sports turf industry, road construction, and also the building industry. And there are really a lot of new applications in the pipeline to consider in the future. Next one, please. My second good reason will be that there, as a matter of fact, with this waste stream, there is a considerable potential for climate change mitigation. We have made comprehensive and peer-reviewed LCA studies that documents a considerable environmental benefits from the material recycling of end-of-life tires. There are two main disposal routes for end-of-life tires in Europe. One is material recycling, another is energy recovery, mainly in cement kilns. And in these two routes, there is a difference of 700 kilo per ton tire input in climate change mitigation. So 700 kilos of carbon dioxide equivalents are saved every time a ton of end-of-life tires will be moved from energy recovery to material recycling. But however, still more than 1 billion tons of end-of-life tires are used for energy recovery in the EU. So we really have here a potential to have as much as possible of these tires being material recycled instead, and then gain the environmental benefit from this. Next slide, please. I mentioned shortly that we already have some national criteria in some member states. In particular, we are talking about Italy, Portugal, and Spain. They have implemented the national end of waste criteria for the end-of-life tires. And of course, they have valuable experience on the practical things about working with these end of waste criteria in their national level. So we are not starting from scratch. We have a lot of experience already from countries working with end of waste criteria for end-of-life tires to begin with. Next one, please. We have a very well documented stream. I know that Alex van Gelderen from ETRMA will talk a little bit about this later, because it is his organization ETRMA that we can thank for these very good data on the end-of-life tire waste stream. They are documented on basis of the arisings, how many end-of-life tires you have as arisings in each member state, and how many tons will go to each disposal route, as you can see here. So we have a very, very good picture of what is actually happening with end-of-life tires. And that is also a help when you are going to start to develop end-of-waste criteria and do the work with that. Last one, please. And then last but not least, there is a support for end-of-waste criteria in the entire end-of-life tire supply chain. There are support from the tire manufacturers, which are represented by ETRMA, also from the national collection schemes, which are extremely important within this area. And they are supporting from the recycling industry, which is represented by EuRIC. We have a common stance and a common position that we want to work and supply whatever is needed of data for the Commission in order to work with EU-wide end-of-waste criteria for end-of-life tires. So there's an alignment throughout the entire end-of-life tire supply chain. 5 good reasons to choose end-of-life tires as the first end-of-waste EU end-of-waste criteria to work with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lars, for this quick introduction into end-of-life tires. I think that's really interesting. I would love to first give the stage now over to Alex from the European Tire and Rubber Manufacturers Association, who has another insight on that topic, as they are representing more than 4,000 companies EU-wide. And after that, Lars, I would love to get you back on stage to maybe get a few questions on this topic to both of you. But first, Alex, please, that's your stage. Tell us all about it.
Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Lars, for this very good overview. The one thing I would very much like to echo to start off with is that we are very well working together as ETRMA, as the European Tire and Rubber Manufacturers Association, with EuRIC, with the recyclers, with the ELT management companies throughout the value chain of this rubber material. We are very much aligned there, and as such, I will have the same arguments and same points to bring forward as Lars did. But I think what I wanted to give an overview of is what we have done in the past as an industry, as a rubber value chain, and to give also a little bit of a where we want to go overview. And what we need there is of course this end of waste status. I would say that over the past 25 years we have set up extended producer responsibility systems throughout Europe, and with that we have created this collection system for the tires, and we are collecting all of the tires and making them all available for recycling throughout Europe. And we have, I would say, solved this logistical issue of having this valuable material made available for recycling. With that, of course, that also has allowed the development of the recycling industries for this tire material throughout Europe, and development of markets where we are now. The only problem we see at this point in time is that we see a stagnation in the development and uptake of this mechanical recycling. We see over the past 5 to 10 years that the amount of tires we are able to send within Europe to mechanical recycling has stagnated. We still see the need for the tire-derived fuels in the sense of the co-incineration, mainly in the cement industry, and of course this also gives very much a chance to improve that in the sense of the waste hierarchy, and to improve the amount of material that is made available to mechanical recycling. But we also see at the same point in time that we need technological breakthroughs in terms of the technologies that are available for the material in recycling. For instance, one of the things that we are always very involved with is the devulcanization of the material. The difference between rubber and plastics is that rubber is a thermoset material after vulcanization, and to be able to process that back into vulcanized, unvulcanized materials needs a devulcanization process. But to achieve all that, to achieve further uptake of mechanical recycling and advancement in the markets there, we need to add value to this market stream, to this very valuable high level material. And this can only be done, in our opinion, through an end of waste status. Advancing the recycling market for rubber further than where we are now, we really need to add this value to this system. We really need to add an end of waste status so we can have a further advancement of this material. I think we are very much a front runner in the circular economy with the rubber materials, and we need to stay there. We need to be realistic, and we need to go further even. I think one of the two things we have going for us is that we have national end of waste statuses. This gives us a good basis for end of waste development, criteria development in Europe. There's a good overlap there, but of course there's still some differences, and we need to be aware of these differences, and we need to be aware of what we can achieve within Europe for this end of waste statuses. And I think the other thing I wanted to highlight is that, and I think the Lars already iterated it a little bit, we know a lot about the material, we have a very good cooperation, but we've also seen REACH restrictions coming up on the ELT derived materials that are going into the market. And the funny thing there is that REACH only applies when does not apply to waste materials. So it only applies to those countries where formal national end of waste statuses exist, and for the rest, it's on the basis of an assessment, of course. And I think the other thing that is very important to say is that we have had a decision under the Caracal for the REACH, where the material, rubber granulates and powders that are in the market are a mixture, and therefore we also have to comply with the CLP, the classification and labeling mixtures. It's clear that we have to provide material safety data sheets with the material, and of course we also need there to support the recycling industry to make that happen. And for that reason, we have also set up the researchers, which we have done the EuRIC study on the human health impact of the material. But we have also, at least at the national level, for those countries that have end of waste, we have set up the sameness principles for under REACH. We have set up the toxicity level screening for the CLP regulation, and we are now looking at creating a guidance throughout Europe for the recycling industry to be able to also meet that level of demand when we are talking about an end of waste. But and I think that is a very critical thing, and that's also why I'm here, and that's also why what I wanted to convey to you is that we are as a tire manufacturing industry fully supporting the advancement of the recycling of rubber within Europe, and that's a little bit of what I wanted to say to you today.
Thank you so much, Alex. And with that, Lars, maybe you want to turn on your camera and mic as well for that, and let's have a short look on this, because you're bringing forward a lot of good points for why tires should be the priority with all of that. We've got the projects in countries Portugal, Spain, Italy. We've got the market told us all about it. You've got the possibilities in CO2 reduction, of course. But are there other things you would say could stop you from doing this, except of course what we talked about, quality and standards and everything? Other things you would say that are other key factors you would need to implement that are not yet there except of regulation?
I would say that we in the tire recycling industry, of course, wants to invest money in product development to make new applications. Excuse me. To make new applications for the rubber that we produce. And of course, in order to convey these kind of investments in development, product development and research, it is of course necessary for us that we are not working with a waste product, but we are working with a secondary raw material product. it is really essential. So I think, you know, but you may say that what could hold you back if we are not getting out of this waste status would be that it would not be so easy to attract money in order to do more research and product development. And really, we have 1 million tons of tires that might be switched from energy recovery to material recycling. It's a lot of tonnage, and it has a huge impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So I think it's really this waste status that is our current hindrance, I would say.
Thank you so much, Lars. And further than that, the questions are coming in one after the other. On the tires, can you talk a little bit about the possibilities there? Because of course we have always the difference, even in end of waste as a secondary material, between downcycling and upcycling. And how do you see the potentials there in the rubber industry? Because of course we've got the thermic use in cement and everything. And here came a few questions regarding pyrolysis, and what are the possibilities there, and how do you see the development there, depending on end of waste? Alex, maybe you want to go on to that.
Yeah, sure. I think in general terms, what we are looking at is to extend the life cycle, the lifetime of the rubber as much as possible. And in that sense, we are not looking at terms like downcycling and upcycling, but we are looking at where we can replace virgin materials with the recycled rubber material. And in that sense, we are not promoting markets that are just there because we are adding recycled materials to it. We are promoting markets and the development of markets where they replace existing virgin materials, existing markets. And in that sense, we have of course the tire life and the retreading and that sort of thing. We have after that the material recycling and trying to have the material into the market for as long as possible within different applications. But at the end of the day, we also need an exit of the material from the market and some way to bring that back into other forms of production. I think there you are going to talk about chemical recycling, things like pyrolysis, which could be an alternative to the co-incineration and the way to be able to create materials that can be a feedstock for new types of plastics or rubber. I think that might be an answer. And I think in general, what I already said is why do we require an end of waste? Is that I think we have done a good job with the recycling and where we are at this point in time, but we need to have an advancement, and advancing the business case of recycling from a waste perspective is just not something we can do any further than what we have been doing at this point in time. We really need to have an added value there. We need to have a level playing field across Europe. We need to advance the markets. We need to advance the technology to be able to go into the next step.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. And with that, I would like to ask all the speakers to come back to the stage to have a few closing remarks. And I've got a few further questions. But first, I would love to give it over to Peter once again. You heard a lot of good points for the different material streams, waste streams. Maybe you can say a little bit about what your thoughts are, because I asked before as well for the criteria you want to set up, and you've heard a few good points, I'm sure, and maybe you can just tell us what are your thoughts, what are your ideas on especially these three streams. We've got tires, we've got phosphorus, we've got paper. What would you say, what are maybe the things you take from here, or the things that are most important to you?
Thank you very much. Indeed, it has been. Thank you also to the previous speakers. I think the information you provided is extremely valuable and useful, and will be fed into this selection process. As I said earlier, we are making a prioritization exercise by the end of this year, and on that basis, we will select only one waste stream to work on for the implementing act. But there will be further on in time, a few years onwards, there will be other waste streams that will be considered by the Commission. So it's fairly limited process, but we will in any event look into the three waste streams that you have presented here, and they are already part of this evaluation, of this exercise that we are doing with the Joint Research Center. And I think I have seen we are of course already very well aware of the importance of these the markets for these waste streams and the potentials that they offer for the circular economy, which is very important, and we will take this into consideration, of course, with the Joint Research Center in the work that they're doing right now to come to this prioritization of waste streams. But what I think very much valuable information on the market relevance of these waste streams we have taken very good note of in the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Emmanuel, I'm sure I just wanted to hand it over to you. You are really, maybe you have a good idea on the whole overview from your side of EuRIC. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it, what your thoughts are on this.
To be frank, first, I again would like to thank the Commission and Peter Westman for taking the time to join us this morning. To be frank, we are on one hand glad to see the process resuming after a few years where there were not many developments at European level on end of waste. On the other hand, I'm a bit concerned about the pace of the development of the end of waste criteria. And I truly hope that once all the internal work that the Commission is doing, the prioritization process might lead to a prioritization of more than one criteria. I mean, we can well see that for some streams, I think the conditions are already there. You have either European harmonized quality standard that exists. On others, the industry has been working closely, and that's the case for tires with basically the recyclers and the manufacturing industry at the same time, and pleading for the same thing. We need end of waste to be able to make a bigger step forward in terms of developing new markets, new circular markets. And this is a message I want to put forward, because as EuRIC, we are a multi-material organization. We are an umbrella organization for recyclers. So we do have different branches, and we don't want the end of waste criteria to end up being a beauty contest, if I may say. We know that it's very, very important that for the Commission to resume the work to do a kind of prioritization, to make sure that the data is collected, that the information is there, that is going to add value to the action plan. But from a recycling perspective, regardless of the branches, be it tires, be it paper, be it plastics and others, we see that there is a real need to make progress towards end of waste. And I understand that today the Commission is bound by the process that Peter has been putting forward, but I hope that in the very near future we might be able to expand the numbers of materials that are going to be prioritized. And also, it's also very important because we see a lot of initiative at member state level that we try to follow and even feed in whenever we think it's necessary, to make sure that there is a bit of consistency between what Italy did for the last 10 to 15 years, because Italy has been a country that has been at the forefront of implementing national end of waste criteria, and we see it worked out for all streams. And at the same time, other countries which are moving forward, like Spain, for instance, and Alicia Garcia-Franklin will tell us very quickly, or very shortly actually, what is happening, which today are following suit. And while this is a very positive movement, we want to make sure that the EU will be there to do what it has been doing for goods for the last 60 years, which is to bring consistency and have a well-functioning internal market. And that's really absolutely essential, because I've always tried to highlight the fact that today we all want to move towards a more circular economy, but only 12% of the raw materials that are used by the industry in Europe come from recycled. Those are Eurostat data. So if we want to make those investments and basically scale up in terms of quantity and quality, we need to have certainty in terms of market, and end of waste is really part of the puzzle. The demand size that Sébastien has been putting forward, Ricard, for instance, on recycled content, or pool measure, green public procurement, which is also very important when it comes to some end markets for tires, or other streams are also important to make sure that we are going to level the playing field with extractive raw materials, and also put the instruments to make sure that both the private sector and the public sector is going to incentivize circular material use, is really important. So I wanted to wrap up a bit, not say too much at the same time, but put forward that message that we strongly support what the Commission is doing, and hope that we will be able together in the near future to move a bit faster when it comes to developing those criteria.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Maybe I can get that up, because we've heard a lot about what you as the industry need from politics to move forward. But maybe, Peter, I can ask you that as well, because we've got with Emmanuel, with Alex, Lars, Sarah, Sebastian, Alicia, we've got a lot of people very determined to move forward with that. So what would it be from your end that you need from the industry to move forward as soon as possible?
Thank you. Yes, we have, of course, during some time now, compiled the information from the industry. We have turned to the industry during this year to compile information, and our joint research center in the Commission is processing all this information, and it includes the information that you have provided today, because very much of that is now very relevant in this prioritization process. Of course, as Emmanuel rightly said, we are bound by this process that we are now under to select a number of priority streams, and we can only work on one stream the next 2023 until 2023. But of course, after that, from the same prioritization that we are doing now, we will be able to work on further waste streams later on. And of course, continuously markets evolve, and different data and standards are developed and so on. So we are of course very interested to receive information also continuously on developments and changes and taking place. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Maybe before we go over to Alicia, Sebastian, maybe I can ask you on that. And do you have possibilities from your side, especially with paper and everything, to find these informations, to get these together, or what is it you would say are the most important things you would want to highlight, looking at the possibilities, looking at now also the different streams we've discussed? What is it you would like to highlight in the end, maybe to Peter, maybe to the rest, to get even further with that?
Well, thanks, Felix. Again, as paper and board is concerned, I think it's really non-hazardous waste. You have an internal EU market to incorporate the fibers. You have the waste streams that are identified, that are being collected everywhere. You have an European guidelines, the EN 643. So I think it fits perfectly. And when it comes to gathering the information and providing it to the European Commission, to the GRC, to all the different members, it's really something we keep on doing on I would say, a daily basis. We work hand in hand with other recycling companies on this matter, with other federation, national association, with EuRIC, because it's really it would be really a good way to demonstrate, to make the proof that the circular economy within the European Union works and is possible and is achievable.
Thank you for that. And with that, Alicia, maybe I can hand it over to you to tell us about what you're doing in Spain, how's it working, and have a few closing remarks as well.
Thank you. If I can share my screen, Felix.
Yes, 1 second. Here you go. Now you should be able.
Thank you, Manuel, for inviting me to these Recycler Talks, and thank you to all of the other parts of the conference. The Spanish Recycling and Recovery Federation, we have 258 members, and our members is all the chains and all the flows: waste carrier, non-hazardous waste managers, shredder, post-shredder separation plants, plastic, pallets, textiles, dismantle, end-of-life vehicles, used tire, and weed treatment. Our experience started in 2002 because it's almost 20 years ago when the 6th Environmental Action Program says that we have to establish a strategy for the development of revision of the legislation of waste, including a clarification on the distinction between waste and non-waste. The Commission made the revision of the legislation on waste, and the Directive 2008 on waste established the first issues on this question. Was the Article 6 of the directive that says that end-of-waste specific criteria should be considered, among others, to aggregates, paper, glass, metal, tires, and textiles. The adoption of these specific criteria and a specific type of waste to which such criteria shall apply shall be adopted in accordance with the regulatory procedure, and the Institutes for Prospective Technologic Studies start the work. And really congratulations to the IPTS, because they make a big group between the IPTS, the European Commission, the member states, the NGOs, and the industry. And the industry was heard. The aim was prepare the technical proposal that include all the necessary information as far as possible, makes proposal end of waste for iron, steel, and aluminum scrap, copper, paper, glass, in conformity with Article 6. After 2 years of working, was the Council Regulation 33/2011 establishing criteria determining when certain type of scrap metal ceases to be waste. And the second one, after 2 years, well, between that was the glass, as Peter says, and then in 2013 for the copper and copper alloys. So really are a lot of work to do. And in Spain, we have developed 3 streams. Was the processes uses oil for treatment for the cars, recovery the oil for the ships, and recovery paper and cardboard. And we are now working in 3 more together. Was end of life is the end of life tires, the plastic from mechanical treatment, and the iron, steel, and copper slag. The question then is that the end of waste have negative points because have some doubts sometimes for when is the application, confusion sometimes between byproduct and end of waste condition, the criteria of a management system, or we have to increase costs, but no one pay for that. But have a lot of positive points that establish level playing field through Europe and or through Spain if it's national. Our industry work is recognized and add valued. End of waste condition is the same as secondary raw material. you certify that you have a product of high quality and purity. It increases the confidence in the material, and if it's a product, the legislation on waste does not apply. Apply REACH, but don't worry, it's not so bad. So, end of waste criteria now is the time that come to work together again to develop these criteria in other waste streams. The Commission, as Peter says, there is an initial list for the Commission to work on it that is plastic, textiles, tires, paper, other that is mineral part of construction and demolition waste, slags, and others. And this is my my exposition, and now I am going to say the concluding remarks that I pointed in these recycler talks. Peter told that the end of this waste criteria is fundamental in the circular economy action plan within the Commission study currently in process, and the national development priority flows will be decided before end of the year. For Sebastián Ricard, he said that we need the end of waste criteria, especially for paper, to be approved at European level to establish level playing field, safety and certainty to the recycling companies. And Sarah says that regarding organic material, lack of end of waste has been pointed out as a barrier in the interface between waste and chemical legislation. And for the Lars says that end of waste criteria for tires must be chosen because there is some members with national criteria and very well developed markets. The industry has a lot of data to share. And finally, Alex says that the industry needs support in the markets after recycling, and the national criteria is a good way to start working for tires. And finally, for me, we think that if we want to achieve a circular economy, it is necessary to develop end of waste criteria at European level, as Sebastián says, for several waste streams, not just for one waste stream. The industry cannot wait until 3 years per stream. The Commission imposed great speed for the industry to adapt to the legislation, but maybe it's time for the industry to ask the Commission for that same speed on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alicia, for this. And thanks to all of you. You're really, that's really the thing about the whole thing, to not have one thing, because yes, of course, we talked a little bit about what could be the priority right now and what will be the first thing, but in the end, as you said, we will need end of waste criteria for all of this. So to move forward with that as soon as possible, I think will be the most important thing we have here. And with that, I would say we will close this round. Thank you for all your questions, for all your participation in all of that. Thank you all for joining in and showing your support to move this big topic forward. Thanks to all of the speakers for their time, and I would love to give over the word to each of you for a quick, very quick last word from each of you, and then we will be finished. And maybe Sarah, do you want to start in the end of it?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a really important topic, and we are really looking forward to increase the work here to get more end of waste criteria. And I think the phosphorus as a critical raw material has a great potential here to be picked out, because now we have the we can actually have phosphorus recycled within EU, and I think that would be a great way forward. So phosphorus for feed is you have my vote on that one. Thank you.
Thanks. Maybe and then I can give it over to Alex. Alex, what would be your last words on this for the next few years?
I think I want to reiterate what Emmanuel also said. I think we have shortlisted waste streams together, and I think we are all working together to meet the demands of the circular economy, to meet the goals that we have set forward as a European Union for the 2030-2050. And yeah, I think all of the materials have their role to play, and I think we are all working as hard as we can to meet the goals that we have as a society together. And yeah, we would very much like to see an acceleration as well from the Commission on this end of waste work. And yeah, having only one or maybe two streams worked at that towards 2030, that we would love to see an increase there.
Thank you. Sebastian, is there anything you want to highlight regarding our way to the circular economy?
Well, I would say that these end of waste criteria are really the missing links, the missing link we're all waiting for to close the loop of the circular economy in the various waste streams. And of course, we all agree on the fact that they should not be a compromise regarding the health, the safety, the environmental safety issues. But what we are proving is that it's possible to achieve and to meet those criteria. So let's cross fingers and hope that they will come soon.
Thank you. And with that, maybe one last sentence from you, Peter. I know you're getting a lot of slack here for the acceleration, but of course we all know that you're doing your best in deciding what is really worth the time, what is worth the effort to get this pilot project, so it's going to work in the best way possible. Is there anything you want to highlight on this way to end of waste to a circular economy in the EU?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude on behalf of the Commission for this extremely valuable, extremely useful information that you are helping us with. And in fact, these waste streams are of course being examined in very close detail that you have provided, and will be continuously a part of this assessment process. And so of course this is of a very high priority to define the end of waste criteria at EU level, and we will do our best to work as efficiently on this as possible in the Commission, together with our joint research center, to get all data for all the streams, and at least at the end of the year have a list of priority streams that we can work on. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to Emmanuel. Thanks to Alicia for organizing all of this here. As you got together the speakers for this Recyclers talk. Thanks to the organizers of EuRIC for making it possible to join in here. And with that, I would say thank you all as participants to joining in and giving this over to here. Emmanuel, is there any last words from your end? Or perfect.
No, thank you.
And then
we'll resume the Recyclers talk soon, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Get back in. Thank you so much for joining in. We will go on with our next presentation at EuRIC in the next 15 minutes at 11:15. So join back in. Thank you all and have a good day. Bye bye.